Good evening. Welcome to the KPIX 5 Campaign 2018 live stream. I'm Alan Martin.
And I'm Melissa Cain. We are monitoring a number of races this evening, from the race for governor and the battle for U.S. Senate to San Francisco mayor and the recall effort for Santa Clara County Judge Aaron Persky.
And we're monitoring some big voting problems that are happening down in Los Angeles County tonight. Problems big enough to maybe delay many statewide results. We have a team of reporters covering races around the Bay Area. Emily Turner is watching the governor's race. Joe Vasquez with the San Francisco mayor's race. Kit Doe is in Santa Clara covering the race for sheriff.
And Lynn Ramirez is watching the votes come in on the effort to recall Judge Aaron Persky, the first of which will be available in just minutes.
That's what we're looking for, but we're going to start with the big voting problems down in L.A. tonight. Registered voters have been showing up to vote only to find that the polling stations don't have their names listed.
And all this could very well delay the results of statewide races. KPIX 5 anchor Elizabeth Cook is keeping an eye on this for us. Liz?
Yeah, guys, this is so unusual. The political reporter at our sister station in Los Angeles told us tonight he has never seen anything like it. The L.A. County Registrar of Voters says the names of 118,000 registered voters disappeared from the voter rolls today. The registrar says something went wrong with the sign-in books they print for each polling place. The books are used to make sure people are registered. Turns out 1 out of every 3 polling places in Los Angeles County had books with missing names. 120,000 voters in total. People who are affected can request what's called a provisional ballot, but the registrar has 30 days to verify the voter's identity before he can actually count that vote. About 45 minutes ago, gubernatorial candidate and former L.A. Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa had this to say.
There's no need to speculate about why or how this has happened right now. I think what we can say, and I think it's certainly within the realm of reason to say, that where there's an unprecedented number of people who've come to the ballot or come to their polling place and are not on the rolls, 118,000 is a lot of people. I think it's reasonable to ask that they extend the time. We'll see as the night progresses what happens, but that, that's certainly where we are right now.
Last question. 2 candidates should even be declared finishing top 2 tonight, given what we've seen in L.A. County?
I have no idea. It's hard to tell. Well, we've always known that for this campaign, anyway, that it's going to be a long night because, most of the people that support what won in this county and most of the people that are supporting my candidacy are people that vote on election day, not absentee. And so I expect this is going to be a long night no matter what. Obviously, with this new development, it makes it a little longer.
Now, you heard Villaraigosa call on the Registrar of Voters and the Secretary of State to keep those polls in L.A. County open longer tonight so people can actually get the provisional ballots. But the polls in L.A. County closed as scheduled just a few minutes ago at 8 o'clock on the dot. We've asked the Newsom campaign for comment, but have not heard back yet. So what do the problems in L.A. mean for the rest of us here in California? Well, we may not know the final results on statewide races and propositions for some time. Back to you.
Thanks, Liz. Now let's turn it to Emily Turner. She's covering the Newsom campaign tonight at a club in San Francisco south of Market. Emily.
Yeah, as this drama down in Southern California unfolds minute by minute, I actually just moments ago got the opportunity to talk to Gavin Newsom's campaign manager about what he thinks about all of this. And he says that he defers to the registrar and that whatever they decide, they're going to support. And I said, do you think this is Villaraigosa's opportunity to maybe pull it out, to become one of the 2 people who will make it to November? And he said it doesn't matter. What really matters in Southern California is the Senate as well as the House. Those are what matters. He just wants people in Southern California to be able to get out and vote. Now, as far as Gavin Newsom is concerned, he went out and voted today. He had his family in tow. He says he's not nervous. He's more excited about tonight to see what's going to happen, especially if you look at the polls. He is leading by a significant margin, so everyone here tonight expects this to be more of a victory party than anything else. They're more watching to see who's going to get that number 2 spot for the November ballot. And I also earlier talked to the campaign manager about what that means depending on who wins that other spot.
If we end up with a Republican nominee who is or a Republican opponent who is supported by Donald Trump, I think that's pretty clear what sort of the battle lines of the election are going to be. If we end up against a Democrat, maybe a fewer policy differences, but differences of style, differences of leadership, and I think Lieutenant Governor Newsom has shown over the course of his career, starting here in San Francisco, just what that means, that he has the courage to lead and is a different kind of Democrat.
And they have made no secret about it, the Newsom campaign, that they hope that they're going to be running against a GOP candidate because they feel like that's going to be much easier to defeat. We'll obviously see what happens. What's happening in Southern California has a lot of question marks for that other spot if the polls are, in fact, correct. Reporting live in San Francisco, Emily Turner, KPIX 5.
And in Los Angeles, gubernatorial candidate Antonio Villaraigosa voted this morning. The polls show the former LA mayor is fighting with Republican candidate John Cox for second place. And John Cox cast his vote today with his wife in San Diego. President Donald Trump has endorsed John Cox, the Republican, for a governor, did that a few weeks ago. And John Chung also made a last-minute stop in the Bay Area. He spent the day talking to people in Chinatown before casting his ballot today in Southern California. He's currently second to last in the polls, only ahead of Delane Easton.
Political insider Phil Mateer with us tonight. And Phil, your take on the governor's race? Obviously, Gavin Newsom would rather run against a Republican. There's such a stark difference.
He's already begun running against Republican John Cox. What we saw earlier in the campaign was Gavin Newsom attacking Cox, supposedly, for his allegiance to Trump. But that was intended to bring out the differences and to alert Republicans out there that there was a Republican actually running. There's two, Travis Allen and John Cox. But the Newsom campaign would actually prefer Cox. So, to the chagrin of some Democrats, he's sort of been backhanded trying to support the idea of a John Cox nomination. Now, it's going to get interesting down in Los Angeles, especially with these missing votes, because this is the former Los Angeles mayor's breadbasket. This is where he would be getting his votes if he could and will tonight. And it's also interesting because there's Republicans down there, too, and that race could be tight.
Well, and the congressional races down in Southern California, the Republicans are trying to hold on to those seats, so they're rallying that.
They are rallying, and at the same time, the Democrats have a sort of an Oklahoma land rush to try to fight the Republicans. So the question is, which of the Democrats are going to win, or are they? So yes, it's for the entire country is watching those races. We're watching our locals. They're watching us for the blue wave and to see whether it crests or not.
The wind comes sweeping down the plain.
Well, of course, we've got this massive number of voters left off of these printouts, but it's still not clear how many people showed up to actually vote.
That's a good point.
Who were turned away. We know that there's not a big a turnout down there.
The one thing we tend to forget, even in these high-tech times, is that elections are human endeavors. The candidates, for better or worse, human and with their flaws. The people that run the elections, we're still down there signing in, casting our ballots, or not showing up. So, yes, every once in a while we have, actually just about every election there's a flaw somewhere, but I've rarely seen one this big, you know.
That's huge.
That's true.
All right, Phil, thanks. All right, Santa Clara County voters deciding whether to remove Judge Aaron Persky from the bench.
And we got numbers coming in right now. The recall campaign started after he sentenced former Stanford swimmer Brock Turner in 2016, and critics say the 6-month jail sentence was too lenient. Others argue that Persky should not be punished for making a decision within the sentencing guidelines. He spoke with CBS News last week and said a judge cannot be worried about public reaction to any decision. He added that he focused on his ethical restraints and the rule of law.
All right, we've got numbers just coming in right now. This is with 17% of the precincts reporting so far. It is early, but the yes vote 59% and the no vote 41%. But we showed the polling before the election. It was a lot tighter than this. So we'll see. Again, it's early, and these are some of the absentees and the early precincts reporting. KPIX 5's Len Ramirez is watching this decision. He's at the Palo Alto courthouse steps with more. Len?
Yeah, well, Persky supporters are going to be a little disappointed with these numbers. They had hoped to be a little closer. They thought they might start the evening behind, but they had hoped to be a little closer than those percentages that you just read out, because it is going to be very difficult for Persky, if he is to keep his job, to make up the gap right now, which is a pretty significant gap, 59% to 40%. The yes is ahead of the no's in this case. Now, this is where we are tonight. This has been a a very hard-fought campaign, in fact, a very bitter campaign. Just last week, there were dueling news conferences, the yeses and the nos in San Jose, and there were disruptions at both events. So people have been very tuned into this. A lot of victims advocates and women's groups leading the charge on the yes on recall. A lot of judges and the district attorney in Santa Clara County kind of leading the effort on the no's. But at this point, as we just saw from those numbers, it appears that the yeses are pretty far ahead with these early returns. We'll see how the rest of this turns out tonight, but it is not a good start if Judge Persky wants to keep his job. Alan?
All right, Len Ramirez, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
And we got KPIX 5's Devin Feely at the Santa Clara Registrar of Voters.
Yeah, the yes on the recall effort is not having a central gathering this evening as they watch the election returns privately away from the cameras. Now, this is a movement that was largely preceded the Me Too movement, but really has been in some ways benefited from kind of the tailwind of the Me Too movement. And they say it was not only about what they consider to be a lenient and egregious sentence in the Brock Turner case, but they also say that it was a pattern of bias that this judge had in favor often of male defendants and athletes as well against in cases involving women. And so right now encouraging early results for the yes on the recall campaign, 59 to 41, as you mentioned earlier, but those are just the early some of the early results and a long night ahead of it, but off to a good start here at the Registrar of Voters for the yes on the recall campaign. Back to you.
All right, Devin, thanks so much. Let's take a look again at those numbers from Santa Clara County. Now, we showed 59% of the vote was saying yes to recall Judge Persky. Now, this is the vote to replace him. Angela Story with 71% of the vote. Cindy Hendrickson, 29%. So, you guys, your thoughts? I mean, I thought it'd be a lot closer.
That was going to be my question to Melissa as a lawyer, as a journalist. Okay, this got a lot of national and even international attention. It's the controversy over the decision, his sentencing, the conduct of the accused family. It was a tabloid sensation. What effect does that have? And also, what is the legal community's feeling on this? This would be the first time a judge was recalled, not just not reelected, in what, 80 years or something?
Yeah, since 1932 was the last time a judge was recalled in California. And I can tell you the legal community is fairly freaked out by this because the numbers that we're seeing already look really insurmountable for Judge Persky. This is a gap, even with 17% voting, 17% of precincts coming in. If that includes any of those mail ballot votes that came in that tend to be more conservative, then it's going to be unbelievably difficult, if not impossible, for the judge to gain ground and potentially keep his seat. The legal community has got to be very upset by this, but as long as it doesn't happen, I think, with more frequency.
But that's the question.
The ripple effect, right?
The ripple effect. Yeah. If it was so decisive so quickly with these kind of numbers, it would seem like somebody said, well, why not somebody else?
Well, I think for the folks who wanted to recall Persky, they're feeling like this is incredibly egregious what happened here. And, ideally, this sort of things wouldn't happen so frequently so that you wouldn't necessarily have the groundswell of a movement to recall judges. But with any sort of
just
frequency.
Really quickly, was what the judge did, he was following the probation suggestions, the district attorney's suggestions? Wasn't he sort of following protocol on this?
In addition to the Brock Turner decision, there were actually some other decisions that he made that folks felt like were also very lenient on other sex offenders in other cases. So it was actually an accumulation of a handful of cases, not just the Brock Turner case that is motivating
and the mood of the country
for the recall. Yeah, to some degree. I mean, it's all in context, of course.
Well, and he stayed silent for quite a while. He didn't get out in front of this to defend himself.
He did the
waited.
Judicial thing rather than the political.
That's right. He did. May have cost him his job. We'll see. All right, let's get you up to speed with some other Bay Area races. Well, these are statewide races. In the race for Lieutenant Governor, Eleni Kounalakis and Jeff Fleisch, now they really ran the big TV campaigns, but Ed Hernandez in second place with 17% of the vote. This is with 13% precincts statewide, but Eleni Kounalakis from Sacramento Right, her father, a big developer
Angelo
in Sacramento.
is very big.
Yeah.
Ed Hernandez is Southern California, and Jeff Bleish is from Piedmont.
There we go. All right, Attorney General, these are the numbers.
That's right. We got Javier Becerra with 52%. We got Stephen Bailey, 21%, and Dave Jones there with 14%. Of course, that's with 13% of precincts voting, but very decisive numbers there for Javier Becerra. Right now, it looks like we're fighting about who is going to be in second place there.
Becerra was appointed. Now he's looking to get the job by the people.
That's right. That's right. And now we're going to move to the U.S. Senate.
U.S. Senate. Dianne Feinstein with 37% of the vote. Again, these are just early returns, but this is pretty much what it showed. However, James Bradley in second place with 12%. Kevin De Leon was really considered to be, well, again, it's very early, so we don't know. And he may come on, but Feinstein's going to win.
But we had not seen Bradley that high up in a lot of the polls.
No.
Right, but there are Republicans in the state of California. We might not think so necessarily in the Bay Area, but there are about 25%. And if they see that R, they're going to go for it. Now, there was a very long
There are a lot of R's, though.
There were a lot of R's, and somehow he got singled out, and he could be in the running.
Okay.
That's right. And let's talk about the race for San Francisco mayor now. Here are the candidates. We've got Angela Alioto, a former San Francisco supervisor who worked in recent years as a civil rights and anti-discrimination attorney. We got London Breed, elected to the Board of Supervisors in 2013, and most recently served as acting mayor for 5 weeks after Mayor Ed Lee died in December.
And Jane Kim serves on the Board of Supervisors, District 6, which includes South of Market, the Mission Bay, Tenderloin. Before that, she was on the San Francisco School Board. And, of course, Mark Leno was on the Board of Supervisors before being elected to the State Assembly and then, of course, on to the State Senate.
And we have a team of reporters at watch parties tonight. We have KPIX 5's Andrea Borba with Mark Leno supporters, Susie Steimel with the Jane Kim campaign. But first, let's go to Joe Vasquez, who's with London Breed supporters. Joe?
Well, there's a bit of nervous anticipation in the air here. We haven't even gotten any early returns yet, so folks are waiting and watching. The candidate is not here yet, but the party is starting to wind up a little bit. I will tell you, it's been an unusual ride for London Breed, the president of the Board of Supervisors. Remember, she took that position after Mayor Ed Lee passed away late last year. She only held the position of acting mayor for a short period of time until the Board of Supervisors took her out of that position because they felt it was unfair for her to have some advantage as she was running for mayor. Make no mistake about it, she wasn't happy about being removed. She continues to be unhappy about that, and she is very enthusiastic about getting back into that office. Meanwhile, she has spent a lot of time on the campaign trail. I caught up with her late this evening as she was trying to get voters to the poll, even at the last minute. She says she is lifted up by the number of voters who have given her hope by believing in her as well as this city.
Born and raised in San Francisco, she'll be a mayor for all of us.
I think what's most important is this campaign brought so many people from so many parts of San Francisco together, and no matter what, I want to see that momentum continue. Everyone wants the city to tackle homelessness, and how we do that is so important, but we got to do it together. We got to make the kinds of decisions that are the hard decisions, like Scott Wiener's working on SB 1045 to help with mental illness, like some of the things that we need to do here to build more housing. Working together is the only way we're going to solve these challenges, and I'm excited about the momentum from this campaign, and I'm hoping that that carries us through to make the kind of changes to get San Francisco moving in the right direction.
As you've talked to voters, what has buoyed you, what has given you hope, and what has made you realize, oh, we've got some problems?
So what's given me hope is the excitement from young people. They just run up and they hug me and they're excited. We need to make sure that their education system is right. We need to make sure we have more housing so they can afford to live here. We need to make the transportation system better. So that really gives me hope that the next generation of young people will have a real fighting chance of being a part of the fabric of San Francisco.
But there is some anger. Like, there are people who've lived here a long time, and you've told me you've felt that. It's palpable.
Yeah, and I've lived here my whole life. My mom was born and raised here too. A lot of frustration with people who no longer can afford to live in San Francisco. We can't turn back the hands of time, but what we can do is prevent things from happening in the first place. And that involves changing policies. That involves making the right decisions now. Hi, how are you? Everyone talks about our city and it's going to grow, and yes, it's going to grow. So let's make sure that it doesn't have a negative impact on the people who are already here.
London Breed could make history tonight. If she wins, she would be the first African-American woman to get elected mayor of San Francisco. We don't expect to see the candidate until probably in the 9 o'clock, maybe even close to 10 o'clock hour. A lot depends on how these early returns come in, guys, and they're all eyes on these early returns. And then you know how it goes. They'll be looking at key precincts. But unlike many other races we cover, because it's ranked choice voting, it is just up in the air, because as the lower candidates lose, they get dropped off, at the end, at the bottom, they start to give up their second place and third place votes, and anything goes, and no one really knows what's going to happen here.
It can be kind of confusing sometimes.
It can. It's so hard to poll, so hard to predict. Thanks so much, Joe. Now let's go to KPIX 5's Andrea Borba. She's with Mark Leno supporters at Harvey Milk Plaza. Andrea?
Well, you can take a look behind me. We have a party here at the corner of Castro Market. It's been described as a block party atmosphere, but we're going to pan the camera around and show you this is really Mark Leno's corner at this point. His campaign headquarters are across the street. I spoke with him a short time ago. He said that he is running on pure adrenaline at this point. He's wearing on his lapel this evening a pen of Harvey Milk. He says he's doing it to honor Harvey Milk. One of his friends gave it to him in the past few hours. He also said if he does not win the election tonight, he will not be running again for another office. If he does win the mayorship here in San Francisco, says he will run for re-election next year. But if he loses tonight, this is his final campaign. Now, we spoke to Mark Leno a short time ago and asked him about his coalition with Jane Kim in the ranked choice voting system. Here is what he had to say.
And I just made it public that my second vote was going to go for Jane Kim. She did the same. And that's what ranked choice voting is all about. Who can put together a coalition of support to get 50% plus one votes? So I know someone had suggested it was gaming the system. It is the system. And that's exactly what it's intended to do. More camaraderie rather than just dropping negative bombs on every opponent and scorched earth strategy. That's what we see all too often. And ranked choice voting is quite the opposite of that.
Now, Mr. Leno says he doesn't expect that there will be a result in this election tonight. He says that he believes there will be some indication about who has the most number one votes, but he's not sure that the number two votes and even the number three votes in this ranked choice voting system will get counted until tomorrow, possibly the next day. Now, crowds out here can watch the returns out on the screen that they've set up at the corner of Castro and Market and 17th Street. And the music has been going here for about an hour at this point. They said they want this to be a block party, a celebration. They hope for a Mayor Leno win. Back to you.
All right, Andrea Borba in the Castro. Thanks.
Now let's send it out to Susie Steimel. She's live at the Folsom Street Foundry with Jane Kim supporters.
Hey there, we are at the watch party for the Jane Kim campaign, and we are on Folsom Street at the Foundry. Things are still a little bit slow. People are starting to trickle in, and as you talk to people that are Jane Kim supporters today, there's certainly a sense of nerves. That's because for the majority of the people who are pushing for her to win this election tonight, they are all concerned about voter turnout. And as we know, initially the numbers for voter turnout don't look necessarily bad, but they look like your average primary election for a June 5th election. And when we talked to Jane Kim about that, she said that she's blaming a lot of that on what she says is voter confusion. She was counting on a lot of young techies and people who are new to San Francisco to be supporters of her campaign. Also hoping that there were people who were among the Bernie Sanders supporters that threw support behind her Senate campaign to come out sort of in that fury that we've talked about as elections are gathering some steam with the anti-President Trump sentiment. There was some hope that that fury would translate into this election and that Jane Kim Kim's campaign could take advantage of that. We'll see if that will happen, but that's certainly something that her campaign is worried about. And when we talked to her about her choice to also work with Mark Leno on ranked choice this election, she says she stands behind that decision. Here's what she had to say.
Senator Mark Leno and I are electeds that have known each other for quite a period of time, and we do align on a number of different policies and priorities, and so we thought it would be a great idea to educate voters about ranked choice voting by telling them who we are ranking number 2.
So we are expecting that Jane Kim will actually be here within the next 30 minutes, but that she's going to spend some time in a green room, gathering her thoughts, kind of waiting for those results to trickle in. And then as those results trickle in, we're expecting to hear some Proposition C supporters speak on her behalf, also a handful of members of the Board of Supervisors. We know that Norman Yee is expected to be here and speak on her behalf, as well as former San Francisco Supervisor John Avalos, all saying things about how they are here to support Jane Kim. We're expecting them to take the stage in the next 30 minutes or so. And her campaign says they are still hopeful. They're watching those results, as we all are, with bated breath. And they said if she wins tonight, they're planning to party here until well after 2 a.m. in the morning. Back to you.
All right, Susie, thanks.
Yeah, so we're not seeing the huge, anti-Trump blue wave that I think some folks were counting on. What do you think that means for a race like the mayor's race, that we've had such a sort of meh turnout, the technical term?
It means that a high turnout, as we just, Susie just told us, favored Jane Kim. Younger voters, possibly the Bernie-crats, would show up and go with the progressive agenda. A lower turnout, that tends to also skew older. I know that in the early returns, people that were over 40 were the predominant group voting. That favors Angela Alioto up on our screen, but it also really favors former state Senator Mark Leno, because he's been around town for 20-plus years and people know him. So it's good news for Leno. It's not so good news for Jane Kim. It's also good news for London Breed. She has been out and her people have been out. The firefighters are behind her 100%, and they have been out on the west side of town. That's the more moderate to conservative side of town, working the precincts out there to get the early vote in and get the more conservative vote in. So a lot of this race tonight is going to be a tale of the turnout.
All right, let's get to some numbers since we have our first race called. The Associated Press now projecting that Democratic U.S. Senator Dianne Feinstein has won the California primary in a bid for her 5th full term to go to Washington. With 41% the vote, the surprise here might be that Kevin De Leon only brought in about 7%. I think he might be a little shocked by that.
First part of the race is over. Dianne Feinstein will be in the
only 3%
into the November election. Okay, the question is whether the Republican or a fellow Democrat, Kevin De Leon, is going to be the second one.
But remember, these first returns that come in, they're usually from smaller places, often more rural places, so they tend to skew a little more to the right when you first start getting those numbers coming in, and then as more urban areas bring their numbers in, the larger numbers, things sort of swing to the left. That's generally how these things go, so it's not surprising that James Bradley is now in this lead over Kevin De Leon. Whether he can keep it, we don't know, but that's not surprising.
With Kevin De Leon was trying to sell himself primarily to Democrats. He was not selling himself to Republicans. The Republicans are out there. So as the night goes, if the Republicans show up to vote and the Republican can grab those votes, he'll probably best Kevin De Leon, because the Democrats obviously are voting for Dianne Feinstein. That's a national story as well. Remember that it was just a couple of months ago when Kevin De Leon announced he was going up against Dianne Feinstein. What was the national media question? Is she too old? Is this the final day coming? Will this change the U.S. Senate? Will Dianne Feinstein, the legend of the Judiciary Committee and the Intelligence Committee, be ousted by one of her own? It looks like she's pretty solid.
But yeah, it doesn't hurt her when you see Trump and he's got all the senators around him at the table, and Dianne Feinstein is right next to him.
Well, I mean, a lot of people
She's the
say, hey,
ranking.
we'd like somebody in the room.
Yeah, it
You
hurts
know?
with somebody, yes, it does. But that was also 4 or 5 news cycles ago. And these days, there's a new
It's
image
over like
every
that,
minute.
isn't it?
Well, I'll tell you, too, she told me earlier today that that she will do a debate against whomever is on the ballot in November.
All right. Our streaming coverage of Campaign 2018 continues right here where you're watching live. We're going to take a moment now, join our viewers on KPIX 5, give them the latest results. Stay with us. This is a Campaign 2018 election update. I'm Alan Martin. Let's get you caught up on the biggest races. Santa Clara County numbers right now have been coming in. We have been looking at the Judge Aaron Persky recall numbers, and the first numbers that we showed. The yes vote was 59% to recall the judge from the bench, and the no 41%, but that's 17% of the precincts reporting. A quick look at early poll numbers for the governor's race right now. And we're seeing that John Cox bringing in 33% of the vote, the Republican in the lead with 60% of the precincts reporting. Gavin Newsom, 25%. We'll have to see if that holds throughout the night. A live watch party in San Francisco's Soma district. We're expecting Gavin Newsom to show up, and we'll be back with our live streaming coverage in just a moment.
Watch out for those precincts reporting. It's not sick.
All right, let's go further south now, the peninsula, the race for Santa Clara County Sheriff.
So embattled Santa Clara County Sheriff Laurie Smith is fighting to keep her job. The department has been faced with several scandals under her leadership, opening the door for today's race. And these are the latest numbers coming in. We've got Smith in the lead with 30%. We've got John Hirokawa with 30%. And John Lejeunesse?
Joe LaJeunesse.
Oh, so I'm from Georgia. I can't pronounce that. With 12% of the vote. So it looks like with 17% of precincts reporting, Laurie Smith definitely ahead, but not an insurmountable lead over John Hirokawa.
All right, KPIX 5's Kit Doe at the John Hirokawa Watch Party, which is in Campbell tonight. Kit?
Yeah, we're at the Kyoto Palace, a very popular Japanese restaurant here in Campbell. As you can see here, a very lively atmosphere, which is now the epicenter of the John Hirokawa campaign. A lot of grassroots support here. Hirokawa is trailing for now. He's got 40% of the precincts reporting. Laurie Smith is, last we saw, as you mentioned, they're 45%, and Hirokawa at 30%. So at least for Hirokawa, we do have some footage of him walking in the room here to a very loud roar of the crowd here. He said tonight that he's feeling very optimistic because it looks like the two are headed for a runoff. Hirokawa is a retired deputy. He used to be the #2 at the department. He's run on a platform of jail reform and transparency. Hirokawa says he was touched by all the support from his campaign that he's received over the months. Sheriff Laurie Smith, however, is reportedly at a private event tonight. Here's Hirokawa to reflect on that. The mood here is the complete opposite from what we're seeing with your opponent. She has canceled her public appearance, and she has not made herself very easily available. We had to track her down. What do you make of that on election night, her not making herself available to the public?
Well, I would say this. There's a contrast between myself and the incumbent. You know, I'm about transparency. I'm about bringing integrity to the sheriff's office and being open about the decisions that are being made on a day-to-day or on a long-term basis.
Alrighty, so the top vote getter here has to get more than 50% of the vote in order to win this election, but at this pace, it doesn't look like Laurie Smith has the votes just yet. But the big wild card, of course, is all the absentee ballots that are still uncounted out there. Hirokawa told the crowd tonight they're feeling very good about this, very optimistic, and they've got a couple more months of hitting the campaign trail, fundraising and all that to take this all the way to November. So we'll monitor the situation here in Campbell, but for now, we are live. Kit Doe, KPIX 5.
All right, Kit, thanks so much.
Now let's send it to KPIX 5's Maria Medina. She's with the Laurie Smith camp. Maria?
Yeah, you know, as Kit Doe mentioned, the sheriff is not holding an open watch party, including the media, like other candidates tonight. And in fact, it's been a pretty interesting night for us to track her down. For the last few days, we've asked her campaign staff to tell us, you know, exactly where she will be tonight, if she's going to hold a watch party. They did not respond to us. Finally, we did hear that she would make an appearance here at the South Bay Labor Council tonight. They did confirm with her that she would make an appearance here, but then a short while ago she canceled. Now, it was a source who actually told us she was having a private event at a friend's home not too far away from here in San Jose. She agreed to talk to us after we tracked her down for just a few minutes, just as long as we only talked about the election and not the negative publicity she's received recently. But she did talk about how heated it's gotten, and here's what she said.
It's been dirty and nasty and dishonest in the past, too. And so it's what I expect. It's what I go through. I don't know why this election is particularly dirty, but it always has been. I try to take the high road. I try to keep my head up, do the right thing, and know that we have a great department that does good work.
So as you guys have mentioned, this has probably been the most vulnerable Smith has been in an election. Smith's drawn a lot of criticism for her leadership in the last few years within the department and the jails, especially after the deadly beating of Michael Tyree at the main jail by 3 deputies. Still, the question is, why didn't she hold a public watch party with the media? And it sounds like she answered that question in her soundbite. She says this race has been particularly dirty, but will it continue to be dirty? We will probably find out in the next few months, because she says she is prepared for a runoff. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Maria. Now let's go to the East Bay, where Alameda County District Attorney Nancy O'Malley is running for re-election against Pamela Price.
Pamela Price is a civil rights attorney from Oakland, taking on support of billionaire progressive George Soros. And here are the latest numbers, with almost 30% of the precincts now tabulated. Nancy O'Malley seems to be in clear control of this race with 64% of the vote, and Pamela Price 36%.
Not sure how Price is going to overcome that deficit. KPIX 5's Kristen Ayers is with the Price campaign now.
Yeah, and there's still a lot of optimism in the room here at Price's campaign. We actually caught up with Pamela Price a little earlier today, and she was out there hitting the streets, connecting with voters, shaking hands, talking to people, trying to get any amount of last-minute support that she can get. She has certainly been a bit of a dark horse in this race. Her campaign has been compared to Bernie Sanders at some point. People saying that she is a truly progressive candidate, taking on a more traditional sort of law and order candidate, Nancy O'Malley, who's had quite a lot of support from the law enforcement community, from law enforcement agencies and police unions. Pamela Price, on the other hand, however, bringing a very liberal platform to the table here. She has been in favor of eliminating use of the death penalty and holding police accountable. She says she wants to end mass incarceration, and she says those goals are all hitting home in Alameda County.
My sense is that people are done with the old ways, that people want someone who's actually going to reflect the change that we've already voted for. I mean, the things that I'm talking about, Alameda County has voted for at least the last 2 election cycles. So this is nothing new.
Now, Price would be the first African-American female candidate if elected, and she's actually had quite a bit of non-traditional support. Nancy O'Malley has been able to garner the support of the governor, of U.S. senators. Pamela Price has had a lot of outside support. She actually got a tweet from the film director Ava DuVernay. Danny Glover, the actor, has expressed his support from her, and also the activist Sean King. But again, the question remains to be seen whether she will get that sort of support locally from Alameda County voters, who many of whom are just learning her name. Reporting live in Oakland, Kristen Ayers, KPIX 5.
Thanks so much, Kristen.
All right, KPIX 5's Julia Goodrich watching the numbers from the Nancy O'Malley side of the race. And what's the latest from where you are, Juliet?
Hi there, Alan. Yes, we are at her campaign watch party right now. A huge crowd directly behind me cheering her on, as you can see. This is the first time in nearly a decade that Alameda County DA Nancy O'Malley is running against an opponent. Nancy O'Malley with me live right now. And what is that like? This is really the first time that you've faced this kind of going into it.
Well, I'm out in the community a lot, and so for me, being out in the community, meeting people I haven't met yet, campaigning was really great. I mean, it was exciting to meet people throughout the whole county. It's exciting to talk about the accomplishments of my office and the things that I've done, and then having to end with, and I appreciate your vote. So it's been a very exciting year.
Leading into it, though, for the campaign, a little tricky on either side?
Well, I think the campaign's been interesting. With the outside money, changed the game quite a bit. But, you know, we had a strong grassroots effort. You know, people in the community that have been so supportive, not just in raising money, but also people being encouraging and introducing me to other people, and the community really coming together to make sure that I stayed in this position.
Are you keeping a watchful eye on the returns right now, I assume?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Going into it a little bit nervous?
Well, I would say it was a little bit like waiting for the bar exam. You don't know. You don't.
Did you pass the first time?
I absolutely did pass the first time.
Well, there's your crowd. I've never had a crowd so quiet. They all wanted to hear you speak. Thank you very much. We'll continue talking with you throughout the evening.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Okay, and that's us live here. Alan, back to you. This is the campaign support group, if you will. We're still keeping a watchful eye on the returns. Let's send it back to you now.
All right, Juliet, the bar exam. I don't know that. You know what that's like, waiting for the results from the bar exam.
I do. It is nerve-wracking.
All right, we're closely watching the votes coming in from Bay Area voters for Regional Measure 3.
Of course, our roads are falling apart. This measure would push money toward fixing them.
Yeah, but it would mean tolls on every bridge except the Golden Gate would go up $3 over the next several years.
So Elizabeth Cook is watching those results for us. Liz, what do you got?
Melissa, Allen, voters in all Bay Area counties are being asked about toll increases on all Bay Area bridges except the Golden Gate Bridge. If approved, tolls would rise a total of $3 in 3 stages starting in 2019. That would raise an estimated $4.45 billion over the next 25 years to fund highway and mass transit projects. The measure needs a simple majority of the total 9-county vote in order to pass. Now, here are the latest numbers on Regional Measure 3 just coming in. Here are the numbers from Santa Clara County. Again, with these, okay, well, hold on, it's coming right here. All right, let's go to San Mateo County. These are just early returns right now. San Mateo County, 54% are saying yes, 46% saying no. Again, it all needs a simple majority of the total vote to pass. We're keeping an eye on these numbers, and we will...
Okay, now we can hear everybody.
Okay, am I surprised? A little bit. Let's take a look at that. This is Santa Clara and San Mateo counties. They have probably some of the least number of people that
they
are
don't go across the bridge.
Right.
Yeah.
But they stood to benefit everything from BART to Santa Clara to Caltrain improvements going into the heart of San Francisco. So this was free money for them. And I'm surprised it wasn't passing. Numbers. San Mateo, 54 to 46. I'm surprised it's not a higher yes vote. Where they're going to run into real trouble possibly is in Alameda and Contra Costa and Solano counties, where they actually, the people that use the bridges live. And they are going to have to pay for it.
That's
well,
right.
here's
We've
the
also
North Bay,
got
same situation.
We've got some Napa numbers coming in here. We got 52% yes and 48% no, and that's with 99%.
I'm surprised the yes isn't higher there, too.
Exactly. Like I said, free money for Napa County. So it's going to be a touch-and-go night for this regional measure. This measure has had the backing of the establishment in the Bay Area, the political establishment, the business establishment. Okay, in Alameda County, it's 53-47 early returns. That is a good sign for them in Regional Measure 3. If they carry Alameda County, then there's a good chance this passes. But there's like a $3 million campaign to pass this, and big donors included Facebook and health care centers.
Here's a
Check
big
out
story.
the Solano numbers, though. This is a little more predictable. 32% yes and 68% no. This is with 18% of precincts reporting.
So we're going to see where this is. This is really going to see if this is a regional returns on a regional measure. measure that
Well,
has one group pay and the other group profit.
Well, you get $3 million to pass it and $0 against it, really. So this is all, I mean, the no votes are all really organic. I mean, these are not coming from any kind of campaign.
We're going to take a look at some of the other measures going on and see if it happens. Because, one of the toughest things you have in one of these measures, even to get us to give away money, is that people go into the ballot box and they have a tendency to say no. If they don't completely understand the measure, they just vote no.
Right. And I think that was the campaign against this measure, was everybody who sits in their car going across a bridge saying, I don't want to pay more.
But the backers sold it very well. And they have legitimate, use for the money. It is going into transportation projects, but that's an interesting one. All right.
Yeah. All right. Let's check in on some statewide races as we kind of catch our breath now. All right, let's focus in now on the race for U.S. Senate.
Senator Dianne Feinstein taking the top spot in this primary as she is seeking her 5th full term in the Senate. Here's a look at the numbers there. 40% for Dianne Feinstein, 11% for James Bradley, and just 9% for Kevin De Leon, who might not even make it to the general election. We got 4% of precincts reporting, but Dianne Feinstein has enough of a lead to go ahead and call the race for her. So while these numbers may change tonight, we are sure she is going to be the winner. We're going to be looking at Bradley, at De Leon, and anyone else who gets into that second place spot. I talked to Senator Dianne Feinstein today about being in Washington on Election Day, and she says, don't take anything for granted.
There are 32 candidates on the ballot. I just ask people to search for my name, find it, and vote. I found it when I voted in California. My name was at the very bottom of my ballot, and that was a bit staggering, and that never happened before. Well, what I've learned is never take anything for granted. And what I've learned is that California is such a vast state. It's the 5th largest economic power on earth. People move quickly. It's a state that has grown. We're now over 40 million people. We have a lot of problems that need solving. We've got the DACA youngsters out there, 300,000 strong. We need to do that. We've got to see more people get into Medicare. We do pretty well. We have about 38 million people that have some kind of coverage. The problem is cost for people, and we have to do something about prescription drugs to be able to see that their cost is down. We have to be able to protect people's rights. That's LGBT rights, it's women's rights, it's civil rights. So there's a very active agenda going on.
You know, it's interesting. That is Dianne Feinstein. Okay, I'm going to get blunt here. Okay, you're looking at that, you say, well, is she looking tired? Is she looking like maybe it's time to retire? And then she starts coming out with the facts and the figures that show a command of the issues in California. And that is what gets her continuously reelected. The feeling in the state between Democrats and Republicans that she knows what she's doing and she knows what we need. She is a person that runs on results, not rhetoric.
Well, one of the things she said is right before this this interview, she had just come, she was a little late, she had just come from an intelligence committee meeting. And so if that may explain why she looked a little drained. I think that would do that to any of us.
So for both of you, obviously that race is called, and it's a race for second place and who's going to be there in November. Is anyone going to be able to, any one of them going to be able to mount the challenge to her in November?
Well, anything's possible. The odds of it are pretty long. One of the interesting things we're going to be watching for, at least insiders are going to be watching for tonight also is, in that case, is Kevin De Leon. So that raises two questions. How strong is the quote-unquote progressive resistance movement in California? Because that is what he entered the race on, and that's what he's been running on. And second of all, is the Latino vote going to turn out tonight for him and the governor's race and others?
True.
That's right. True. Now let's move on to the race for lieutenant governor. It has been an expensive race. And it is crowded. 11 candidates are running. And joining us live is candidate Eleni Kounalakis, joining us from a very loud party. Eleni, how are you doing there tonight?
Well, we're doing great. You know, this has been a very exciting and a very long journey. Some more numbers just went up. Apparently, they're positive. And, you know, we started this campaign by going to all 58 counties of California, by having lots of cups of coffee, by listening to people, to families, to business people, to organizers, to school teachers, and to healthcare workers, and really listen to what's going on out there. And that has formed the basis of this campaign. We've built on it, and now here we are. The voters have cast their vote, and we're very excited about the early return.
Let me ask you, Eleni, how do you answer your critics who say, look, she has never held public office, and here she is running for the #2 spot in the state of California. She's not prepared. How do you answer those people?
So I ran a United States embassy of almost 400 people in a former Soviet satellite country. I was President Obama's personal representative. We had some serious challenges during the time I was there. I know how government works. I went to Afghanistan 2 times. I understand emergency preparedness. We have a lot of work to do here in California. We need people who understand government, and I do. But I also spent 18 years in business, and I worked in housing, building communities for working families and middle-class families. So I know I have the experience to be able to do a good job for the people of this state.
All righty. Thank you so much, Eleni. We appreciate you taking the time. Have fun tonight.
All right, let's bring Phil back in.
The most interesting thing about this race is that, you know, it wasn't that long ago that people, Lieutenant Governor,
nobody cared.
Nobody cared. Yeah. Nobody cared. But what we're seeing tonight is 2 ambassadors, 2 former U.S. ambassadors are running. A state senator is running. We've got a former mayor of Richmond running for lieutenant governor. An economics professor. What it is now seen as a launching pad to possibly the governorship. That if you have that platform, without having to take any embarrassing votes or troubling things, except for on the lands commission or something like that, you can use it as a springboard. Gray Davis did it, and Gavin Newsom's hoping to do it. And I have a feeling that these candidates are looking at it going, this could be a shortcut round to the governor or Senate or national office.
Spending a lot of money to do it, too.
And that's where it's worth it.
I couldn't find another lieutenant governor's race where at this point in the election cycle, so just for the primary, there was this much money being spent. It's, what do we got? Kounalakis has spent $6 million, Cole Harris $2.4, Jeff Weiss $2.3 million.
That's only the straight up money. You got to remember that there's money coming in on independent expenditure commissions and committees and stuff like that. There's a lot of money for it. We won't know about that probably for weeks after the election, but those TV ads are costing.
I was going to say, the folks at home, they know the TV ads.
Oh, yeah.
They ran.
And sometimes you'd kind of wish they'd turn off
for that
right about now.
Sometimes you run to get the remote and hit mute.
In some places like here in the Democratic areas, the Bay Area, where we've turned out to vote, we get hit with a lot of commercials. And I would say, if you look back, it was hard in the last couple of days to distinguish between the lieutenant governor commercials and the governor commercials. They were running at such a clip.
That's true. Back to back.
That is why, because this is now seen as the gateway or the springboard into either a governor or a Senate race.
God bless them. They keep the lights on.
Yeah, don't they? All right, elsewhere in California, across the country, Democrats sort of tripping over themselves, trying to flip Republican congressional districts.
That's right. Democrats have to pick up 23 seats in November in order to take control of the House. So the spotlight is on the states that are holding primary elections today. Here's a map of the 8 states holding midterm elections. As you can see, California is by far the biggest with the most congressional seats up for grabs. And all eyes are on these 7 California districts. The reason? These districts are represented by Republicans in Congress, but they all voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016, indicating that they could flip and send a Democrat to Congress. District 10 in northern San Joaquin Valley is just one of those targets. It's currently represented by Republican Jeff Denham. It actually has more registered Democrats than Republicans. Denham is being challenged by Democrat Michael Eggman, who tried to unseat Denham in 2016 but lost by just 2%.
I actually voted for Denham. And why? I think he's doing a great job right now. So far, everything seems to be peaceful enough, and I usually have a good feeling about how he does as a congressional representative.
District 48 is another one to watch. That's Orange County. It's currently represented by Republican Dana Rohrabacher. And there are 3 Republicans running and 5 Democrats. So there's a big fear here that Democrats' voters will be spread too thin and that 2 Republicans are going to finish first and second. Perhaps Rohrabacher and his protege, Scott Baugh, who is also on the ballot.
The Democrats have banked all their hopes on coming in here and taking this seat from the Republicans. If there are 2 Republicans in the general election, the Democrats lose automatically.
President Trump tweeted his support of California Republican House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy as well as Devin Nunes, although neither congressman appears to be in danger of losing their seat. He added, "Keep our country out of the hands of high-tax, high-crime Nancy Pelosi." So why are these congressional races so important for election watchers? We asked CBS correspondent Ed O'Keefe to weigh in.
Well, for those of us not in California, the biggest reason we're monitoring what happens there today is because the balance of the House of Representatives may rest on what exactly voters decide to do, especially in a handful of congressional districts to the south. House Democrats, if they want to retake control this November, have to hold on to all of their seats and pick up another 23. They believe they've got a chance to win as many as 4, or as little as 4, as many as 10 across the Golden State. And if they can get into these jungle primaries tonight and box out Republicans in some of these districts, they'll start chipping away at that advantage and end up having to maybe only win another 21 or 20 seats, depending on how things go. But Republicans are pretty convinced they'll be able to hold on and play on to the next round in November.
The jungle primary. That's the term for it. Let's break down some of the races. Let's take them one by one as we can bring up some of the numbers. We'll start with District 5, which includes L.A. and Ventura County. The Republican incumbent, Steve Knight, seems to be, these are early returns, but he's got 55% of the vote. He doesn't seem to be in danger.
Well, no, but it also looks like there will be another Democrat in, I mean, the whole thing right now for Democrats is just get to November, and it looks like that's happening. U.S. House District 39, we've got Young Kim there in front with 28%, and look, Gil Cisneros and Phil Liberatore fighting it out for who is going to be that second person on the ballot. That's an example of what we're talking about, where Democrats can get boxed out. U.S. House District 45, Mimi Walters, popular there, 54% of the vote, already a winner, and as you can see, we've got 2 Democrats at least fighting out to be on that ballot in November. It does look like someone from the Democratic Party is going to make it, and this is where it gets interesting. This House District 48, this is Dana Rohrabacher, of course, in the lead, but now we've got
Look how close.
We got a Democrat and a Republican fighting it out to get that second place spot, and that a Republican taking over that second place spot is really the Democrats' nightmare there. Same with House District 49, where we've got Diane Harkey in first place and 2 Democrats fighting it out for second place, so probably a Democrat getting on that general election.
No incumbent. I mean, this is one of the seats retiring congressperson, so
and if you
look
look at the numbers and add them together, it's very close. If you take all the Democratic votes, one Democrat gets in, the other one, if they get their votes, then it becomes a close race. But, you know, that's one where it's an open seat. It's tough to take out an incumbent congressperson. It just is. Because while we have national debates, and then poll after poll shows that people don't like Congress as an institution, their own congressperson, if they answer the phone when you call with a constituent problem with your passport, with immigration, with taxes or something like that, and you get good service, that's what you remember.
You do.
That's right. If you look at David Valadao, for example, in District 21. That is a hugely Democratic-leaning district, but he's a Republican who's been in office for many years. They vote for him and then Barack Obama, and they vote for him and then Hillary Clinton. There seems to be those kind of personal local relationships that can trump any other kind of
well,
that can Trump.
Yeah.
See what we did there?
There's a choice of the words. All right, are we going to move on as we hit or we just passed the top of the hour, or the results are starting to pick up? Again, thank you for joining us on the KPIX 5 campaign 2018 live stream.
That's right. We're monitoring a number of races this evening. Voting snafu in Los Angeles causing a controversy tonight in the race for governor. And voters seem likely to recall Santa Clara County Judge Aaron Persky.
We do have the team of reporters covering races around the Bay Area. Emily Turner watching the governor's race. Joe Vasquez with the San Francisco mayor's race.
Kid Doe is in Santa Clara covering the race for sheriff, and Lynn Ramirez is watching the votes come in on the Persky recall.
All right, but first let's take a look at these numbers that we've gotten in, with 7% of the precincts reporting statewide in the race for Governor. Gavin Newsom now in the lead with 34%, and Republican John Cox at 27%, and Travis Allen, the other Republican candidate, with 13%. But, as we mentioned, there is trouble in the Southland, where a lot of those Republican votes are coming from. Just 15 minutes ago, the Villaraigosa campaign calling on the LA County Registrar voters, keep those polling places in LA County open until Friday. So far, the Registrar hasn't said what they plan to do.
And KPIX 5 anchor Elizabeth Cook has been watching what's going on down there all night. Liz?
Melissa Allen, the LA County Registrar of Voters, confirms the names of 118,000 registered voters disappeared from the voter rolls today. The registrar says something went wrong with the sign-in books they print for each polling place. The books are used to make sure people are registered. Turns out 1 out of every 3 polling places in LA County had books with missing names. 118,000 voters in total. People who are affected can request what's called a provisional ballot. But the registrar, here's the thing with that, it has 30 days to verify the voter's identity before he can count that vote. Villaraigosa said a couple of hours ago he thinks this will hurt the results for him, because he says his supporters come out on election day compared to his rival supporters who vote earlier. Again, that's what former LA Mayor Villaraigosa says. We are waiting to see what the LA Registrar of Voters will do and what the California Secretary of State may do. Whatever happens, the problems in Los Angeles probably mean we'll have a lot longer to wait to know the official winners in some statewide races. Back to you guys at the desk.
Okay, Liz, thanks. We'll keep an eye on it.
That's right. And this is the talk at the governor's race tonight. KPIX 5 reporter Emily Turner is with the Newsom campaign in San Francisco. Emily, what are they saying down there?
Congratulations, and while it is technically premature, the polls are all pointing in the direction of Newsom being victorious, at least towards being one of 2 candidates that will be on the ballot in November. I don't think that's a surprise, the numbers that we're seeing right now, to anybody in this room. I think the big question mark tonight is really who else will be on the ballot. You know, he cast his ballot this morning at his family in tow at the poll in Larkspur. He said he was not nervous. He was just really excited, because he says he's been campaigning for this for 3 years, and in the last year he just left it all on the line. And as we said, the polls reflected that. These came in today 8 to 13 points ahead of number 2, which at this point looks like Republican John Cox. He spent the afternoon with Mayor Libby Schaaf in Oakland, and we talked to his campaign manager about what's going on down in Southern California and asked if that was a concern. Here's what he had to say earlier. This, though, is really the kind of epicenter of Villaraigosa's support group, right, or support system. Do you think that we'll have an outcome, and who maybe is going to get second or also be on the ballot come November, considering the polls?
No, I don't. I mean, I think a couple things. One is in the last public polls, we actually have been performing Newsom as well as Villaraigosa in LA County. But more importantly, I think from the early returns, at least, it looks like we're pretty comfortably ahead. I don't think it's going to have an effect on the outcome of our race. But again, there are other races that are important, and frankly, it's a principle, not politics thing. People should be able to vote, and I hope the county registrar figures it out, and whatever he can do within the bounds of the law, he should do.
And that's a pretty comfortable place to be on election night, saying we're not worried about what's happening in the polls, at least as far as our race is concerned. He did go on to say, look, we really hope that whatever they can legally do, they can do, because they say they're worried about those down ballot races as far as the Democratic Party is concerned. But that explains a lot of the atmosphere going on here tonight in San Francisco, which is loud, jubilant, and very excited. Reporting live in San Francisco, Emily Turner, KPIX 5.
What does it say that Travis Allen is number 3 all night and not Antonio Villaraigosa? I mean, the question was, is he going to be number 2? Now he's not even number 3 based on what we've seen so far.
It makes me wonder if everything's coming in from San Diego, Long Beach, the Inland Empire, sort of the Republican bastions. That's one of the things you have to look out for on election night, how the returns come in and where they come in from. Gavin Newsom's got plenty of reasons to be smiling tonight. He's not worried about what's going on in Los Angeles. It's the Democrats that have to worry about it, because that's the question of whether Antonio Villaraigosa is going to get in there as number 2, or if it's going to be a Republican, John Cox or Travis Allen. That completely changes the race.
That's right, and it goes to show that folks like John Chung and Delane Easton just are not even, putting, not even close so far based on what's coming in. But as we said earlier, what comes in early are more rural places, and often the mail ballot votes are more conservative than the electorate overall tends to be. So we do start out on the right, and then as the night goes and more urban areas bring their results in.
They're going to have to deal with this, because Villaraigosa has got a real issue in front. What voting or not voting is key to Democratic elections, and especially among Democrats. So they are going to have to resolve this. It's not just something they can say, oh, that doesn't count.
That's right, but Adisu was right that recent polls at least, were showing that, depending on whose poll you listen to, that Newsom was doing just as well as Villaraigosa in L.A. L.A. was not necessarily sort of a honeypot for Villaraigosa. That was definitely up for grabs with a number of other candidates. So even if there was this massive problem down in L.A., it's unclear how much of that he would benefit from.
Gavin has to have a clean win. He has got to have a clean win. In politics, the first thing we try to do is say, yeah, you won, but.
Because if it isn't a clean win come November, then he's wounded.
It's just a question. You don't want, that's coming out of the gate. You don't want that. You don't want to be answering questions about the election returns in Los Angeles.
Why didn't John Chung do better? Why isn't he doing better tonight? People thought he would really have a lot of support.
I'll tell you that Gavin Newsom's people were worried about him going out of the gate. I don't think that he caught fire. His personality didn't project. He didn't come up with an issue that sort of made it. Treasurer, keeping of the money. It looked like he was going to rising Asian candidate, but it didn't take off the way that he was the one that Newsom's people were worried about. I think they told you as much, didn't they?
That's right. Toward the end, and he raised about $6 million. I mean, not a small change. That's right. We're going to take a look at some other Bay Area races in the race for lieutenant governor with some amount of precincts reporting, not 100. We've got Eleni Kuniakis at 23%, Cole Harris 19%.
And Jeff Bleich isn't even showing up. I find that hard to believe.
That's true. We got McCole Harris having a strong initial showing. It's not clear he'll be able to hang on to that. Also, Secretary of State numbers coming in. Alex Padilla out front. Wow, we got Mark Musa there. Musser, I apologize, with 35%, and Paul Rodriguez at a distant 5%. So it probably will be Alex and Mark there on the November ballot based on what we're seeing there. And now we've got Attorney General numbers coming in. It's Javier Becerra with 43%, Stephen Bailey with 27%, Eric Early 16%. This is with 11% of precincts reporting, and David Jones not even in that top 3.
You made an interesting point. You were surprised, for example, for Steve Bleich, the running for lieutenant governor. But look at Becerra. He's at 43%. Why? In part because he's an incumbent. He was appointed by Jerry Brown, and he got statewide exposure. These other candidates, it's very difficult. California is this huge, huge area.
You can't get traction.
You can't get traction. It's tough to get attention. You're competing with everything from the Golden State Warriors to Fires. It's very difficult to get attention. It's like bowling with the lights off. You throw the ball, you just hope. You're not sure what's going to do.
Becerra has the gun issue, he's got the immigration issue.
But he's got a platform. He's got a place. You either have to have a lot of money or a platform that gets voters acquainted with you. Otherwise, it's very tough to go up.
But Bleich has the commercial of himself in an Elvis suit, which At least I remembered.
Well, right. He may not be the rock star. Is that what he cannot pull off the rock star look? But
he can at least dress like it.
This is an interesting race. The one for Superintendent of Public Instruction.
Yeah.
Big fight there between Marshall Tuck, who is supported by the charter school advocates, and Tony Thurman, who is supported by the teachers union.
And we had 12% of precincts reporting there, and a lot of money in that race. Just really remarkable amount of money being brought in by Thurman and Tuck. And now let's look at this recall Judge Aaron Persky numbers coming in. We got 39% of precincts reporting, 59% yes, 41% no. Probably able to call that race any minute now. That looks fairly unsurmountable with 40%
well, if he's
of precincts.
Here's the question. Who would be his replacement? And Cindy Hendrickson, with 39% of the precincts in now and counted, she has 71% of the vote. Looks like she would be the next judge.
But that's certainly a dramatic change from what we saw earlier with Angela Story, very, very far in the lead. So definitely some shifts in the geography
going there, huh?
that brought in some new votes for Cindy Hendrickson.
A total of 100,000 votes, the two of them together.
That's right. And let's look at the race for U.S. Senate. We, of course, know that Dianne Feinstein is going to be declared the winner there. Now we're just trying to figure out who's going to come in second.
There's the horse race.
Now we got a race. So James Bradley, they were 10%. We got 11% of precincts reporting, and Kevin De Leon with 10%. So clearly a big fight there for that second place vote. And as you can see, Kevin De Leon picking up some more votes as precincts come in.
What, you're going to say something?
It was interesting. If you're looking at this, we kind of take it for granted. But if you notice the names, Dianne Feinstein, Bay Area. Kevin De Leon, L.A. He's Elena Koliakis, Sacramento, Northern California. Gavin Newsom, San Francisco. The Bay Area, once again, is up there in the front of state politics, even though we are behind the Los Angeles in that area in terms of population.
We have a greater percentage who vote, but they have more numbers.
We got rock star looks up here, too.
There we go.
Sure, we got good hair. Let's look at the San Francisco race for mayor. These are our first numbers coming in. And we've got London Breed at 36%, Mark Leno at 27%, Jane Kim with 18%. These are our mail ballot votes that have been tabulated
and again,
now.
Ranked choice voting going on here for the mayor's race.
That's right, and so it's going to take some time to get more votes in, and then run that scenario where you take the person with the least amount of votes.
Yes, please tell us
how you redistribute them among the other candidates. Now, this is what's interesting. I'll give you an example. So London Breed is 36%, Leno 27%. If it works the way Leno and Kim thought it would and tried to make it work, Kim's 18% would go to Leno after she is eliminated. Like, again, we're assuming
if voters did what these two wanted them
exactly,
to do.
and we're assuming this is what the final numbers look like.
Right,
but if this were what the final numbers look like, where do Kim's numbers go?
Where do Kim's votes go? If they split 50-50, Breed holds on. If the disproportionate of them go to Leno, it's a different story. So that's what this ranked choice voting is like.
And that's why it's going to take time for that to be worked out.
That's right. So we're going to probably look at another 50% of votes that are going to come in today and in the next several days. And we have a team of reporters that watch parties tonight. So let's first go to Joe Vasquez, who's with London Breed supporters. Joe?
Well, as you point out, it's a nuanced view, right? You have to consider the second place and third place voters. But this crowd doesn't want to hear that. Just moments ago, as you mentioned, we just heard that London Breed has 36%, a substantial lead over second place person Mark Leno, and the crowd erupted in applause and joy. I mean, this party's been going on for some time now, and we haven't seen the candidate yet, but I will tell you, we've seen family members, we're seeing activists, neighborhood activists who worked with London Breed for years, well before she became supervisor. Families are here. It's loud. It's a crowd. But I will tell you that a lot of the crowd here tells us they have been inspired by London Breed, not just by what she has been able to accomplish in office, but what she has accomplished in her life for years, including overcoming a very difficult upbringing.
As Cinderella as it gets. As Cinderella as it gets. OC Projects, San Francisco, California, from the gutter, raised by her grandmother.
What does it mean for, if she's able to win, what will that mean for folks who've been in her similar circumstance?
Like I said, it will give them hope. You know, I have a daughter, 18 years old, looks almost just like London, so it's something that the young people can look up to and know, like, hey, I could do that too.
I will tell you that a 9% lead is not the best case scenario, especially this early on, but a lot of folks here were saying that they believed if she were 10 points or even higher by this point, they believe that they could almost call the race by now. So that's close to what they were hoping for, but close to the best case scenario for London Breed at this point, with a lot more votes to count.
All right, Joe Vasquez, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Well, you know, these numbers, these initial mayor's numbers, do look like the limited number of polls that we have do reflect these numbers. So that is to somewhat.
And remember, we
degree,
have other candidates. There's a couple more candidates that we're not showing right now. Angela Alioto and others is a question of where their votes are going to go. This was a very debated run. It was not, sometimes it was kind of tough to figure out who was exactly different from who else in this race, as we saw at candidate forums. But there's a lot at stake here for not just San Francisco, but for Northern California, the Bay Area. Remember that San Francisco still is the engine and in a lot of ways the cultural center of the Bay Area. And whoever is in that mayor's seat for the next 18 months is a very important place and faces a lot of important challenges as well.
That's right. And if you look at these numbers, we're looking at about 65,000 votes coming in. We're expecting about 100,000 votes in this election. That would be sort of on par for this non-presidential primary. So we are looking at, you know, potentially a little more than a majority of the votes right here.
We make it more. It's probably not going to be decided tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it is.
And Mark Farrell not running but not endorsing. What is it? What does that say?
Not running now.
Oh.
You're talking about the interim acting mayor who said that and said initially he wasn't going to run, and then sort of said, well, maybe down the line. What do you say?
I baited that hook, and I was hoping you would.
He's looking at these returns
as well. It's fair to say
well.
He's planning to run in November 2019,
or
at least he's looking very hard at that. I think it's clear he's using his time in office right now to really lay the groundwork and make, create a lot of goodwill. So when he does run next year, he will be in a good position.
Because that's the whole point. This is not a temporary position, but it is a temporary position. They're going to start campaigning, you said, as soon as they win.
Exactly.
Pretty much.
And
remember,
it's dividing along San Francisco's traditional lines of where London Breed is the moderate candidate of, let's say, the Willie Brown, Dianne Feinstein, Gavin Newsom establishment, Ed Lee, Mark Leno, even though he is friendly with them, and Jane Kim are on the progressive side, and that's sort of to the left of that. So there's always this tug of war going on between the two. And that's been going on for decades, so this is the latest fight in that.
All righty, now let's go to Susie Steimel, who's down on Folsom Street.
Guys, it certainly is much more of a party atmosphere than last time we checked in with you. I'm sure you can hear the music is extremely loud. They've got a DJ. Feels like a party atmosphere. So those preliminary numbers showing an edge to candidate Breed are not affecting the mood in here, at least not yet. You can see a good group of people milling around. And a lot of them are actually waiting to hear from some speakers. We just had a group of speakers up on stage talking about Proposition C. That is something that Jane Kim has been championing as a candidate throughout her campaign, and that, of course, would be a tax that would support child care in the city. Now, we also caught up with Jane Kim earlier today talking about some of the concerns about being able to pull off this mayoral win. And for her and her team, it is all about voter turnout. We've been talking about that all night. Will people show up for this campaign? Being on the progressive side of the Democrats of this race, she needs a strong turnout. And when we talked to her about her concerns when the numbers initially looked low, she said she thinks it all comes from education. Take a listen.
We're actually hearing from a lot of voters that they think the election's happening in November. And so I always think that when there is a primary race, voters aren't as aware, which is why we're all out everywhere reminding folks to vote and handing out voter guides, not just my information, because again, we just want voters to be informed.
We also always hear that the new San Francisco, a lot of the young transplants are not voting. What is your campaign doing, and what might need to change to get that demographic to vote?
Organizing is what gets people out to vote, which is why we believe in door knocking. That's why our campaign invested our resources in knocking on 100,000 doors throughout San Francisco.
So again, still a celebratory mood here. We're expecting to hear from Jane Kim later in the night as those results trickle in. For now, we're live in San Francisco. Susie Steimel, KPIX 5.
right.
Voters deciding whether to remove Judge Aaron Persky from the bench. We have some new numbers that are just coming in. 39% of the precincts reporting, 59% of the voters recalling Judge Persky, 41% saying no.
And in terms of who would replace the judge, we've got new numbers. Cindy Hendrickson with 71% of the vote and Angela Story with 29%. That's with 39% of precincts reporting.
All right, Len Ramirez keeping an eye on the decision. He's at the Palo Alto Courthouse. Steps for us tonight. Len?
Well, that's right, Alan. We do have some breaking news in this race in the recall effort for Judge Aaron Persky. I'm here with Ladoris Cordell, who has, in effect, been a campaign manager for the no on recall. What do you have to say about these results, Judge?
Well, right now, we think about 40% of the vote is in, and it shows an 18-point gap, meaning the recall is ahead by 18 or 17 points. So we believe that we'll probably not be able to close that gap with about 40% of the precincts reporting. So given that, we likely have lost our effort to stop this recall. And what I can tell you is that this recall, the reason we opposed it was because we felt this recall, and still believe it, is a threat to judicial independence. And if indeed it has succeeded and a good judge has lost his job for doing his job, I think it's a very sad day for the judiciary in California. And it also should embolden the 40%, the thousands of people who got it, who understood what this recall was really about. And it was not about anything other than taking away judicial independence. So we will continue to fight on, and I hope the thousands of people that voted against the recall will join us in an effort to undo this, because I think this does not bode well for the judiciary in California and maybe for the rest of the country.
Judge, have you spoken to Judge Persky tonight after some of these results came in, and if so, what is he saying?
Yes, I have, and he's clearly saddened by it, but he is going to move on and do whatever he needs to do to continue to take care of his family. So he's not despondent. He's just knows that he put up a good fight, and as we all did in this matter. And I really believe that if we'd had a couple more months, we may have been able to really turn the tide even more. It didn't happen, but that doesn't mean we're going to stop. We are still going to fight the good fight for an independent judiciary.
Thank you. Judge, thanks for sharing that with us. It must be a very difficult time for you as well, working so hard on this. But at this point, it does appear that the lead of the yes on the recall is insurmountable, and the no on recall is all but conceding tonight. Thank you, Judge, very much. All right, we'll send it back to you.
All right, Len and Judge Ladoris Cordell, thanks so much. We appreciate it. Let's look again at the numbers from Santa Clara County, that 18-point differential with the recall vote against Judge Persky. The yes vote with 40%, just about 40% of the precincts in at 59%. And we were sitting here saying that he didn't get out of this ahead of time. He tried to stop it, but he didn't get out and mount any type of a campaign, if you will.
That's right. He tried to appeal the decision to keep the measure on the ballot, and he engaged in a lot of legal wrangling in the months in between the time this was filed and Election Day. He spent a large portion of that trying to litigate this and trying to get a judge to order it off the ballot and not getting out there and campaigning.
Wasn't the argument that he was a state appointee, so locals couldn't do it? Or it was technical. It wasn't even something grand that said this is a constitutional question about judges, I mean, or a big issue about the judiciary. It was on some like, let's get it knocked off.
It was very technical. He tried 2 different ways to do it. It was very, ticky-tack, but he really stuck his ear into that and really sort of focused on that instead of getting out and really making the case to the voter.
And he didn't make himself available, did he?
He did not.
He didn't. And look, there's
to the public.
There is a school of thought that says judges shouldn't be out there politicking, but
this is 2018.
Maybe this is one of those instances where he should have been, as Ladoris said.
Well,
if he had had a little more time to campaign, they may have been able to.
His reaction seemed impersonal, and the crime that he was hearing, the case he was hearing, it was very personal to a lot of people.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Judges aren't usually appointed for their personality or for their political smarts, although some of them tend to have political smarts because they get appointed by someone who has a half-time as a payback. But no, he was not equipped for this, and he didn't come out on it. And even the law community wasn't sure of how to handle it. Were they supposed to jump in and get involved, or did they want to stay back as well?
Yeah, it's hard to know. I mean, there aren't a lot of people lining up to necessarily endorse his decisions, the underlying decisions.
Not when it's the lead story in the country.
That's true. It's getting a lot, and it'll be covered tomorrow. All right, let's check on some of the state propositions. How about Prop 68, $4.1 billion bond measure to fund park improvements and clean water improvements? The numbers with about 12% of the statewide precincts reporting here, 55% of the voters saying yes.
That's right, and State Proposition 69 would ensure that money generated for transportation through the gas tax and vehicle license fees won't get diverted for any other uses. Voters there saying 82% yes, 18% no.
And Prop 70 requires the supermajority in the legislature to approve spending revenue that was generated by the state's cap-and-trade program, but a majority of voters, almost two-thirds, 61%, saying no, at least with 15% of the precincts reporting tonight.
And Prop 72 would allow residents to install rain collection devices without taking a hit on their property taxes. Voters there saying 84% yes, 16% no. Again, that's with 12% of precincts reporting. Now, Phil, you knew the interesting story behind that Prop 72.
There was no opposition.
It was no opposition. It came out of Walnut Creek. A woman in Walnut Creek set up traps or bins and tanks to save rainwater. Right. Like during the drought.
1,500
and she came to a town hall meeting with a state senator and her state assemblywoman and said, hey, why can't we do something to encourage people to do what I'm doing, saving water? And they came up with this. It got universal acceptance. Democrats and Republicans both voted for it. It shows that we, as a nation, and as a people, can still unite behind something. If it doesn't cost us anything, if it does some good, but still, a certain percent still said no.
Well,
yeah, who are they? Who's the 18%?
That's the people that walk in and say no, no,
it's
no.
It's about saving water for a non-rainy day.
I know, but it was the one thing on the ballot. It shows hope that, yes, we can get along.
There are sometimes when you say there ought to be a law, one comes up.
I'm proud of her. I'm really proud of her. All right. We're going to go further south to the peninsula, the race for Santa Clara sheriff.
That's right. Embattled Santa Clara County Sheriff Lori Smith is fighting to keep her job. The department has been faced with several scandals under her leadership, opening the door for today's race. And these are the latest numbers coming in. With 39% of precincts reporting, she's got the lead with 45%. John Hirokawa, her undersheriff, with 30%, who also looks like he will actually, no, this does not go into a runoff. I apologize. So at this point, we're waiting to see who is going to get that 50% in Santa Clara County. At this point, it looks like Smith is going to eke it out, but we've still got 60% of precincts to come in, and that could change.
She is not in the public light tonight, but John Hirokawa is. KPIX 5's. Okay, we're going to stop here for a second, and we're going to go to the Antonio Villaraigosa campaign headquarters. He's speaking. Let's listen in.
Okay. They're setting up the sound right now for here, and I think he's getting ready to go. He should be picking it up, right?
Yeah, I guess we're expecting him to throw in the towel at this point.
Okay.
Potentially, or talk about what the LA registrar is going to be doing and what he's anticipating.
Well, he's asked for them to stay open till Friday, at least collect ballots until Friday. I wonder if he's going to press forward with that. He has nothing to lose. I mean, he has everything to gain.
That's true, so that may be what he's announcing here. There we go.
We're just starting Bailey here.
Got some audio here.
Stand up for equal pay for equal work. Stand up for early child education and prenatal care for children. Stand up for... Thank you for supporting. Somebody else?
Well, we apologize for the audio. Maybe we can...
I couldn't.
There it is.
To be here with all of you. Tonight's going to be a long night, everybody. I think you know that about 118,000 people showed up at the polls and weren't on the voter list.
Yeah.
And so we're going to have to ferret that out. We're going to have to figure that out. I think when you're a leader, you got to calm the waters, so we're not castigating aspersions. We're not saying that something nefarious happened, but I think we all got to have an answer to the question, how is it that in LA County, 118,000 people showed up, and that was the last number, and, we're on the rolls. So we've asked to extend the time
Got it.
to vote, so we can make it clear how many people were turned away. We've been told that a number of people were turned away and weren't allowed to cast a provisional ballot. We've got to figure that out. I also think it's important when you're a leader. Some people said I should scream and get upset, and I said no. You're a leader, you calm the waters. When you're a leader, you say, let's bring people together, let's figure this out. But when you're a leader, you also say, we got to have answers. So in the course of the next day or two, until we figure this out, we won't cast aspersions, but we will demand answers. So tonight is going to be a long night. I hope you're all enjoying yourselves. I'll say a few words later on. I just want to say thank you. Growing up in this town, a town that's given me so much, I'm going to tell you something. I couldn't be prouder to be standing here. No matter what happens tonight, and we're looking at a good night, but no matter what happens tonight, this town has blessed me and my family. And it's why I wanted to run for governor. I wanted to stand for the notion that to whom much is given, much is required. When you've been blessed by the California dream, you got to make sure that you open that door for the rest. So we'll say a few words later on. Enjoy the evening. I see there are a few people working tonight back there. But it's going to be a long night. First, ballots have come in, the early ballots. They were what we expected. Our folks, and when I say our folks, if people think I'm just talking about one group, LA votes at the polls. We're going to get them accustomed to voting absentee.
All right, we've been listening to Antonio Villaraigosa, the former mayor of L.A. and candidate for governor, and he certainly is not conceding. He's saying that we have a big problem down in L.A. County with the registrar of voters. 118,000 people showed up to the polls, and their names weren't on them.
That's right, but it was not exactly the most upbeat speech I've heard. No. Saying we're going to,
it's going to be a long night.
I see the light at the end, and it's shining on us. We have here sort of an inching towards. It's going to be a long night. We're going to want to have answers, but even if he got every one of those votes, I'm not sure it's going to put him ahead of the Republican at this point.
And that may be why the registrar is holding off on making an announcement at this point. Maybe they just are waiting to see if the lapse in votes is actually material to the end.
All right. Our streaming coverage of campaign 2018 continues right here where you're watching live. We're going to take a moment now and join our viewers on KPIX 5, give them the latest results. Stay with us. This is a Campaign 2018 election update. I'm Alan Martin. Let's get you caught up on the biggest races. We are first going to look at the Judge Aaron Persky recall. A spokesperson for the judge just telling KPIX 5 the lead that the Yes campaign has, 59% to 41%, appears to be insurmountable. That 18% difference is just too much, even with 39% in. Early poll numbers on the much contested San Francisco mayor's race showing right now in ranked choice voting: London Breed with 36%, Mark Leno 27%, Jane Kim 18%. U.S. Senator Dianne Feinstein has won the California primary, easily moving to the general election as she seeks a 5th full term. Feinstein's opponent has not yet been determined, as you've seen by the numbers. Our streaming coverage of the primary election continues on KPIX.com and all our social media platforms. All right, let's get back to the Santa Clara County Sheriff's race. KPIX 5's Kit Doe at the John Hirakawa watch party in Campbell tonight. Kit?
Yeah, pretty lively crowd out here at the Kyoto Palace. This is the back room of the restaurant, a popular Japanese spot here in the South Bay. This is the epicenter of the campaign, if you will. No, John Hirakawa is not leading, but he is solidly in second place. But the big story tonight here is that Laurie Smith is about 5 points short of a majority, and for this reason, that is a good reason for this crowd to cheer. And Hirakawa took a swipe at Sheriff Laurie Smith for canceling her public appearance tonight and instead opting to attend a private event. Hirakawa says he's made a point of facing the public, holding forums and answering questions. Hirakawa is a retired deputy. He used to be the #2 at the department, and he's run on a platform of jail reform and transparency. Now, yes, multiple opponents have split the vote against the incumbent, but Hirakawa is truly optimistic that this is headed for a runoff.
Pretty positive, excited about the numbers. What the numbers show me right now is that most likely there'll be a runoff in November, but the majority of the voters who've cast their ballots are indicating they want change. And so the current incumbent doesn't have the 50%. And so if you add up the other numbers, including the other 3 candidates, who I congratulate for the numbers that they received, that I believe the voters want a positive change and reform, both on the custody side and on the enforcement side.
Alrighty, 39% of the precincts reporting, 45% of the vote going to Laurie Smith, 30% going to John Hirakawa. In the past, in the last election, we've seen that those numbers stay pretty solid. So as one observer put it, for John Hirakawa, this is akin to the Warriors getting over the hump and beating Houston. And now all they have to do is buckle down, do a lot of fundraising, hit the campaign trail for the next 5 months as they duke it out until November. It looks like Sheriff Laurie Smith is headed for her first runoff for the first time in 20 years. And we're live in Campbell. Kit Doe, KPIX 5.
All right, Kit, thanks.
All right, let's send it over to KPIX 5's Maria Medina, who's with the Laurie Smith camp. Maria?
Yeah, if you're just joining us, just as Kit Doe mentioned, it appears Sheriff Laurie Smith will be headed for a runoff for the very first time since she was elected as sheriff in 1998. Now, she says she actually expected this with 4 other candidates running against her. We asked her how she felt tonight, and here's what she said.
You know, I'm always apprehensive. You know, I always, you get it in the stomach, but then, I expect that I will get through the primary, and I'm looking forward to the next stage.
All right, so Sheriff Smith agreed to talk to us outside her private watch party, but that was after tracking her down after a source told us where she was holding it. Her campaign staff did not respond to our calls and emails for the last several days on where she would have a watch party. But back out here live, she was supposed to show up here at the South Bay Labor Council, but she canceled her appearance. She told us that, it was just going to be too late for her to appear here. But, not surprising that she wanted something just a little more intimate, given that she's had a lot of publicity in the last few years, especially in the last few months with the race heating up, a lot of scandals surrounding her department and the jails recently. Back to you guys.
Okay, Maria, thanks. All right, regional measure 3. Let's talk about raising the bridge tolls.
All right, let's take a look at how the various counties are doing it.
Bringing it up with Alameda.
53% yes and 47% no. That's just with 29% of precincts reporting, so that is still too close to call in Alameda.
In Contra Costa County, here's the way they're voting. Well, Phil, as you had said earlier, a lot of people commute. And they pay those bridge tolls, and 55% of the vote is no, with 14% of the precincts in that particular county anyway.
And in Napa County, we have 99% of the precincts in, and 52% yes, 48% no. That looks pretty definite there up in Napa.
Again, we're seeing some different numbers depending on which region you're in. In San Francisco, 62% of the vote. These are the very early returns, though. We're not far into this thing in San Francisco County, city and county, but 62% voting yes.
San Mateo County, with just those early returns, we've got 54% yes and 46% no.
So again, let's take a look at Santa Clara County. 61% voting yes for Measure 3. This is going to raise the bridge tolls, not the Golden Gate Bridge, but the state-run bridges, $3 over a period of years. And in Solano County, it is being defeated overwhelmingly. 18% of the precincts in, but 68%.
But you know, we have to look at the different ones. Sonoma County, 52% yes, no, 48%. You have to look at the total vote for the 9-county area. So how many voters you have in Solano versus how many you have in Santa Clara.
We're dealing with percentages here.
And so this is still up in the air. The money would go to, what, 35 different transportation projects around the Bay Area. It's coming at a time also when we just raised the gas tax in California, 12 cents. There's a question whether people are feeling a bit of the at-the-pump fatigue.
Aren't we going to repeal that in November? Isn't that going to be on the
There's a move to repeal that as well. So we all complain about traffic, but when it comes to paying for it, we're not too crazy about that.
That's right. So all those votes sort of go into one big bucket, and of that big bucket of 9 county votes, you need a majority of
have the total.
That. And so we'll have to keep those aggregate numbers in mind as we talk about that. And the talk of the governor's race tonight, KPIX 5 reporter Emily Turner is with the Newsom campaign in San Francisco to say what are they doing there about these LA votes.
Well, they're not at all concerned about these LA votes at all. In fact, even before the Associated Press called Gavin Newsom as one of the folks who's going to be on the ballot in November, I talked to his campaign manager, and he said, look, we aren't concerned at all because we've been polling well in Southern California, even in counties that are strongly conservative, like Orange County. He said, this is not a big concern for us. We're more concerned about the down-ballot races, and as you can tell by how loud it is behind me, the mood here has gotten more and more celebratory as the hours have gone on. Folks just simply, they went from being conservatively excited to now just all-out excited, and the big question mark, as we've been talking about all night, is who's the other name going to be on the ballot?
That's it, indeed. Who is Gavin Newsom going to be running against?
And who does he want to run against?
Right. Is it going to be John Cox? And John Cox is speaking now at his campaign watch party. Let's dip into that.
Clear that he wanted to run against me instead of another Democrat. Well, as I told him in San Jose at the debate, be careful, Mr. Newsom. Be careful for what you wish for. Mr. Newsom and his corrupt cronies they did a bunch of ads touting their opposition to the president. Well, let's send him the very first message, and that is it wasn't Donald Trump who made California the highest tax state in the country. It was Gavin Newsom and the Democrats. It wasn't President Trump who gave us a $52 billion gas tax increase without any reform of Caltrans, one of the most wasteful and inefficient agencies in the country. It wasn't Donald Trump who gave us that gas tax. It was Gavin Newsom, and we're going to repeal that tax in November. It wasn't President Trump that gave us one of the most expensive and failing school systems in the country. This is absolutely criminal to deprive our children of the education they deserve. We know it. The extra tax money that they passed in Prop 30, it's not going into the classroom. It's going to administrators and pensions. We need to get that money into the classroom, and we need to give our children and our parents the education they deserve. And that includes building more charters and giving parents choice and encouraging homeschooling. And it wasn't Donald Trump who piled on the fees, the taxes, the regulations, the delay that has made our housing the most expensive in the country and given us a serious housing crisis. No, Gavin Newsom, you did that. We are going to cut costs. We are going to repeal and replace CEQA. We are going to cut litigation. And we are going to give people the chance to live in a house that's affordable. And it wasn't Donald Trump that passed the sanctuary state. Gavin, you did that. You're the one that's protecting MS-13.
All right, that's John Cox in San Diego giving his followers a bit of a pep talk, because at the last numbers we had, he was in second place. If that holds, he would be the one to run against Gavin Newsom in November.
I want to show you this, just an example. This is, I got this at my house. This is paid for by Gavin for Governor.
Okay.
This is Gavin. This is John Cox. The whole thing is just a big catalog of these two. When he says Gavin Newsom wanted to run against him, he is not kidding. This is put out by the Newsom campaign. It goes through and says things like, John Cox thinks that the Second Amendment is a right, not just an empty promise, and doesn't say anything particularly mean about Mr. Cox in here. It really is kind of a nice shiny catalog highlighting both of them. So when we say Gavin was campaigning in some ways for Mr. Cox, he must be thrilled tonight to both be the front runner and get his
number two
opposition of choice.
It's going to be interesting, though, because Gavin Newsom, as we've covered him for the past decade here in Northern California, has tended to go for the global. He was running for governor on the issue of guns, on the issue of gay marriage, on the issue of climate change, sort of those huge, we're going to make the world better, and running on an anti-Trump message. Now, after doing his latest tour, he came back and I talked to him Friday. I said, what did you hear out there? And he heard, well, I heard about affordability. And people are upset about homelessness, and not just in the Bay Area, but all across the state, in Bakersfield and in Stockton. What did we hear just John Cox hammer on? Not on the global. We didn't hear anything about guns. We didn't hear anything about that. We heard about schools. We heard about roads. We heard about gas taxes. Gavin's going to have to come back down to earth on California. Although Gavin made it clear that he is going to run on the anti-Trump as strong as he can, because with the 60-40 margin in California, that still resonates higher than anything else.
All right, Phil, thanks.
All right, now we're going to go to the East Bay, where Alameda County District Attorney Nancy O'Malley is running for re-election against Pamela Price.
She's the attorney, civil rights attorney, taking on support of billionaire progressive George Soros. And here are the latest numbers that show Nancy O'Malley with a clear and decisive lead, with almost 30% of the vote in, 64% of the voters voting for the incumbent.
And KPIX 5's Kristen Ayers is with the Price camp now. Kristen?
Yeah, and I've had a chance to talk to folks here. They tell me they're not worried about those numbers, despite that large gap that Price would have to overcome to win. The camp is telling me that those numbers are largely vote by mail ballots, and that those tend to skew conservative. Their hope is that as more ballots are counted that actually came in today at each precinct, that they will start to show a stronger show there, and they're hoping that their candidate will come through in the end. Again, Price has been something of a dark horse candidate. She has been compared to Bernie Sanders because she's ridden sort of a progressive wave and a trend toward moving toward DA candidates who are in favor of police reform, so reform-minded candidates. We did catch up with Price earlier today as she was doing some last-minute campaigning, and she told us she's optimistic about what could happen tonight.
I've been talking to voters. I've been watching people walk with pride and purpose as they voted for the first African-American woman district attorney. For the first time in 50 years, people got a chance to vote for who represents them in our criminal justice system.
Now, Price's platform is to end mass incarceration, eliminate use of the death penalty, and hold police accountable. She says that those are goals that constituents here in Alameda County are already in favor of. And her campaign told us tonight that whatever happens tonight, this is a big step for her campaign for some of these reform issues, and that basically change is hard, that these issues have really come up for the first time. They note that this is the first time in 50 years that they've actually had a contested election. So we'll continue to keep an eye on those numbers. Reporting live in Oakland, Kristen Ayers, KPIX 5.
Thanks so much, Kristen.
All right, KPIX 5's Juliet Goodrich watching the numbers from the O'Malley camp. She joins us now. Juliet?
Well, let's go straight to Nancy O'Malley and talk to her right now and see how she's feeling about things. We're at her campaign election party. Tell me how things are in your mind right now.
Well, the numbers are great. We worked very hard. I worked very hard. It's very encouraging to know that the voters of Alameda County didn't pay attention to the hit pieces, that they really want people to, they wanted us to continue, and I'm just very gratified by that.
We're talking the first time you had an opponent. What was that like for you in this campaign?
Well, I stayed on the high road because I just want to be respectful, and I want it to be about the issues. And I'm disappointed that there's that outside money that was so negative that it really detracted from the issues.
All right, well, we'll stay on top of this. Appreciate your time. We're going to send it back to you in the studio now.
All right, Juliet, thanks. Let's get another quick look at the top races.
In Santa Clara County, backers of Judge Aaron Persky concede he will be recalled.
He's about 59% of the vote voting to recall Judge Persky,
with 41% saying no, and that's with 39% of precincts reporting. And if we take a look at the San Francisco mayor's race, we've got London Breed with 36%, Mark Leno 27%, Jane Kim 18%. Those are just the absentee ballots at this point.
Again, ranked choice voting, so it could take some time to figure all this one out to see who the top contenders are. The race for governor, Gavin Newsom in the lead with 35%, but the races for second place. Right now, John Cox, the Republican, with 26%, and Travis Allen, the other Republican, 11%.
And in the lieutenant governor's race, I believe we got Eleni Koniakis is with 23%, Ed Hernandez at 20%, Cole Harris 19%. That's with 15% of precincts reporting.
Another statewide race that we're keeping tabs on is the superintendent of public instruction, Marshall Tuck, with 38% of the vote, and Tony Thurman 33%, but 14% of the precincts reporting.
30%, I think, are in. No, 30 seconds to go?
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
14% reporting. That's right. That superintendent of public instruction raised $12 million in independent expenditures.
And that's just the warm-up.
Oh, that's right.
Because
just the primary.
don't remember, everything we're seeing now gets repeated virtually in November.
Top two, the jungle.
The jungle. That's right.
All right. Thanks for joining us. Continuing coverage on Bay Area Night Beat, and of course back on KPIX 5 at 11 o'clock.
Thank you.
Oh, they said 30.
Codes of silence that other men come to expect from us. This collectively defines